Good morning and very sorry for the delayed start. My name is Gürbüz Gönül. I'm the Director for Country Engagement and Partnerships at IRENA. And I would like to welcome you all to the Ministerial Roundtable on Accelerated Partnership for Renewables in Africa. Without further ado, I would like to invite IRENA Director General, Mr. Francesco La Camera, for his opening remarks and also for the signing of declaration.
So, welcome to our Global Hub for Renewable for Energy Transition. This is one of, I think, the most important meetings that we are going to have in this room. We are all happy about the start of this COP, and we hope that this is one of the most important milestones that will come out from all these days. We had the chance already to present this initiative with the presence of the head of states a few days ago. And at that time, I recognized the leadership of President Ruto, making clear how this initiative in some way make clear how Africa wants not anymore to complain about what's happening, but is ready for working for the future and making Africa the land of opportunities through going through renewables. We also have listened about the story of the triple, and I want to briefly say how this started, because sometimes it's good to repeat. Our life is plenty of adventure and surprise in some way, because you know that IRENA was calling for the triple of renewable energy installed capacity already in 2021, where the triple meant 750, 800 of gigawatt per year. And I recall during the presentation with the head of state how this came from, and we have the opportunity that was given to us to present our analysis in the first ministerial in this year, going to Dubai. It was in Copenhagen. I recognize today that I was planning something else. I was in South America. I was going to Rio to prepare our participation to the G20, but Thomas kindly obliged me, ordered me to go to Copenhagen. So that's what I did, and that was nice because I have the opportunity to present our triple as the translation in gigawatt or terawatt of the Paris Agreement and on the IPCC report. So 11 terawatt as just the way to feed the gap between the demand, the going down of fossil fuel with clean energy, and having the 43%. But the story is that after that meeting, we discovered that Dan was not anymore in room. I mean, the minister of Copenhagen, of Denmark, he was already in the press, say we need 1,000 gigawatts per year of new installed capacity of renewables. And immediately after, in fact, some days after, the COP presidency come and say we need the triple. There was the 1,000 gigawatts. So it's where the story starts, and now it's a reality. We have almost all countries that have already signed or they are going to sign. So we see sometime in life as there is a switch that makes things happening. We have been unheard for 3 years, and something at least happened. And this also for APRA. APRA is a very important initiative. I think is one of the most important ventures for IRENA. And we have been lucky that we have been access to the office of President Ruto. We have 2 external partners that have guided us. Germany and Denmark is in this pathway. And now finally APRA is a reality. We have launched the alliance. In fact, President Ruto launched the alliance in Nairobi. And then we are presenting in this day. So I stop with this. I want to just tell this story, so see how life could be adventure. The members of the partnership are Kenya, Namibia, Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, and Ghana is joining, and other, I'm sure, will join. Then we have Denmark, we have Germany, and we have the UAE from our side, and Arena plays this kind of role of secretariat. I think all our people here, our friends, they have busy days, but we thought that having this signing in a very simple way, but just to make the evidence of the fact, we have prepared this table. Is not a very appropriate table, but what is appropriate is the feeling behind that signing. So if, I don't know if we have all the members here, but I will ask one by one to go and sign. In the spirit of speed up, we will sign standing, okay, without sitting, okay? So please, may I invite Sierra Leone to go and sign? Minister from Ethiopia, please. Zimbabwe, please. Denmark, please.
Just saying, Jennifer, I like being called Dan, but it's too short of a name for all.
Germany, please. Good. We have no other. Okay, naturally, the document will be open for signature. When the other will come, they will sign. I now invite Gurbus to guide the discussion.
Thank you very much, Director General. We would like to start with the ministerial segment of our event, and we would like to have a very dynamic discussion. So apologies for departing from traditional protocol running order for our discussion. So I would like to start with Dr. Kande Yumkella. President Bio, together with President Ruto, they have together launched the initiative, the APRA partnership at Africa Climate Summit. And immediately after, President also called for a national dialogue on just energy transition, climate resilience, and food security, which are high on the agenda of the government. And I had the pleasure to also be part of that discussion, and we have also organized back-to-back, in conjunction with the dialogue, the APRA consultative discussions. But within that vision, how do you see the role of APRA, and how APRA can contribute to the ambitions that the Sierra Leone has for energy transition?
Thank you very much. We want to thank
IRENA for its leadership in bringing us together. Indeed, my president and my country were fully supportive of APRA because we have a need. Our electrification rates, best estimates are 26%. We have 250 megawatts installed capacity, but normally we dispatch 150. We've set a clear target, which is consistent with the decisions here at COP28. We want to add 200 more mini-grids, which means we'll triple from 100 mini-grids to 200 mini-grids. At the same time, we want to increase bulk energy production. We want to double our capacity by adding another 250 to 300 megawatts. All of that can be renewables. If we do that, it means practically on the ground, we will in fact double energy access in my country. We will increase renewable share to 60%. So we will walk the talk. Why do we need APRA? To get the policy environment right. So that assistance is immediately needed. But more importantly, where I see all of us failing is the ability to design those projects and make them bankable. Many African countries have plans already. They have targets already. Some of them even have the enabling conditions, like we've done. We have 100 mini-grids on the ground, 6 years, and they're running. What we lack is that ability to design the projects now to scale up from 100 to 200 mini-grids. Also, we want to embed those mini-grids in the agricultural production areas. So you do the nexus, energy for productive uses, energy for local economic development. So they have the ability to pay for that power. So the mini-grid developers, we can pay them. So we need APRA. That's why we're fully here, and we're very pleased to see the partners. But more importantly, we want to learn from Ethiopia and Kenya. And so the two presidents, President Ruto and Bio, we've made a deal, and the Kenyans have sent a team. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Can we quickly learn from Kenya? They've gone through our path, but backed indeed by Germany, Denmark, and hopefully Bezos Fund.
Thank you very much, Kande. Let me turn to Zimbabwe. Gloria Magomba is with us, Permanent Secretary for Energy. Gloria, Zimbabwe has high ambitions, 40% emission reductions. On top of that, 2.1 gigawatt new renewable power installed, full universal access by all by 2030. And how do you see the role of APRA within that picture? How APRA can help reach those ambitions?
Good morning once again, Your Excellencies. I would like to say all protocol observed in the interest of time. As Zimbabwe, as you have aptly put it, and I think based on what my friend Amkel has said, we do have a clear vision to achieve the middle income society by 2030. And to achieve that, we do need energy, because energy remains at the core of our economic growth. We also have come up with a renewable energy policy where we are putting up this ambitious target of 2,100 megawatts by 2030, which we are working on. And if you look at this year pledge, where we are talking about tripling the renewable energy and doubling the energy efficiency, our ambitions dovetail quite well with that theme of this year's conference. But from an APRA point of view, our heads of state, including our own president, has endorsed the need for this partnership, because I think partnerships are key to progress. I liked the concept note which was saying that promoting partnership for progress, which is really another way of saying triple P. But for us as Zimbabwe, we believe that with partnerships, we'll be able to accelerate the need to ensure that the poverty energy gap, which is there now, given that the country has 62% access, that 40% plus or minus needs to be served. And for us, that ambition is not going to be achieved through the state utilities, but what we're looking for is partners, both from private partnerships within the country, but also the partnerships which will then allow us to triple and accelerate the current work which we've already started doing. We expect that in the next 2 years, we would have put in an additional 500 megawatts, which will then triple to 2,100 by 2030. And the need for the partnership is to do the following. The first part is to ensure that we de-risk the energy projects in our country so that we can have access to additional finance. Because the biggest challenge we have is that of finance. We have the projects which are, we have full feasibility studies, almost up to 1,000 megawatts, which is already available for private sector to come in and partner with us to develop these projects. We also need to review our own renewable energy policy. Once we have had it for 5 years, we have only attracted just over 200 megawatts of new capacity in renewables. And we believe that with APRA, we can then review the energy policy, identify the gaps, and we'll then work together to ensure that we create an enabling environment to ensure that private sector comes in. As a country, we already have a legislative framework where we have a regulatory authority. We also have the Electricity Act, which allows for private sector to participate in the energy sector. And it is through this partnership where we believe that we can learn from the other countries which have done a lot, especially Kenya in terms of, and Ethiopia, in terms of also increasing the renewable capacity. But we also want to see our private sector leading in this new development, because we believe that with the private sector we'll then be able to achieve that ambitious target. We believe it's achievable, and we follow this African proverb, which I'm not sure from which country, which says that if you go fast, you can do it alone, but if you want to get further, you need partners with you to do so. So I would like to stop here, but reiterate the fact that we need capacitation, we need de-risking of projects through some form of partial risk guarantees or other mechanisms which look at our own circumstances and come up with financing framework which are able to then accelerate the growth in renewables. And we believe that by investing in us, we are not just transitioning from non-renewable to renewable, but we are actually addressing the issue of access and ending energy poverty, and then also addressing SDGs to ensure that our rural communities move further. The last issue I wanted to highlight is the fact that when we are looking at rural electrification, we are not looking at just giving the rural communities light. What we are doing is we have a whole program which is looking at accelerated end-user program to develop irrigation systems, to develop end-use infrastructure for rural communities, to then create the demand for energy in those areas, but not just creating the demand, but increasing the economic developments in the rural areas. So it's an area which we need to work on, as it is key to our achieving the Vision 2030 of being a middle-income society. The last part which I would like to highlight is that as Africa and Zimbabwe in particular, we do have a lot of critical materials which are key for the production of renewable energy technologies. And what we would like to see through this partnership is the promotion of value addition at source, so that we create the capacity as a country and as for the communities as well, where these critical materials, in particular lithium in Zimbabwe, has a lot of lithium. Once government has already put in a policy to say you cannot extract and sell lithium is in its raw form, it has to be value added. We would like, through APRA, to find partners who can come and work with us to ensure that we value add these critical materials to a point of creating the necessary storage, especially using lithium-ion battery storage at utility scale level. And we believe with our location within Central Southern Africa, we can also be a hub to meet the market demands of our electricity subsector, especially where we want to ensure that we avoid the use of fossil fuels. We need to create the necessary storage capacity to deal with the transitional, the variability of the renewable resources. We also have other energy sources, sufficient sun. We do have the hydro, and we believe that with this partnership, we'll then be able to unlock all these resources to make them useful to our country and help us to not just address the Zimbabwean need, but that of the Southern African region, to improve energy poverty and also ensure that we achieve universal access by 2030.
Thank you very much, Gloria. And thank you also reminding us that APRA is not only about deploying renewables, but also about creating value around it and how to help stimulate green industrialization. And let me turn to Minister Jorgensen. When it comes to renewables-based energy transition, Denmark has been a pioneer. And last Saturday, Prime Minister Frederiksen commented that talking about ambition, talking about tapping the untapped potentials is much easier than actually making things happen. So can you just tell us about what is holding us back? Gloria already gave some, from Zimbabwe point of view, what is holding them back. But if you can just present your view and how APRA can help address those challenges.
Yes, well, it's a great question, because if we look at the market of renewables and we look at the potential investors out there, private, institutional, and we look at the need for these investments, really it should be a no-brainer. And there shouldn't be the obstacles that you're referring to. It should just be happening. But fact of the matter is that there is a disconnect. For some reason, the investments are not happening in the scale that we need them to. So why is that? Well, obviously, there are individual reasons for each country in question, but some of the main arguments that I've heard when talking to investors is, one, the lack of enabling environment. Two, the cost of capital. And there are more, but these are definitely the two biggest ones. Now, so what does enabling environment mean? It means, of course, different things, but it's clear that expertise and knowledge is extremely important. This is something that we hope to be able to help address with this collaboration. It's also clear that when investing huge amounts in the transformation of a whole sector, you need stability, you need certainty that your investment will pay off. That also is something that we need to deal with, and de-risking here is, of course, at the core of solving that challenge. Now, I do think, though, that you asked me a very good question. Nonetheless, I would have to say that I'm being asked a lot of questions about why things are going wrong these days. Well, and it's easy to be depressed. If you look at all the scientific reports, temperatures are increasing, things are going in the wrong direction. But shouldn't we also use this opportunity today to remind each other that this is really a very, very positive collaboration, and it is a momentum of some very ambitious African countries doing great work, institutional investors, the private sectors on board. Denmark and Germany has been working very closely together on this, trying to find the synergies between many of the experiences that we have from having worked with individual African countries and other developing countries for decades now on this, on solving this exact challenge. So I want to end this on a very, very positive note and thank our partners. I really do think that this can in the future be a model for how to solve one of the biggest obstacles we have, which is how to get the green transformation running in developing countries. Now, Irina, thank you so much for hosting this, but also for being an integrated part of this project. We could not have done it without you, obviously. And I would also say that it's important to remember that this is not only about us here in this panel and our countries and organizations. Collaborations like this one are also essential if we are to actually reach the tripling of renewable energy that we need and the doubling of energy efficiency, which we hope will be the outcome of this COP as global targets. Because one thing is putting down a target on a piece of paper. That's a first very important step, obviously. But if we don't have the means of implementation ready, it will not be credible. So this is exactly, cannot stand alone, obviously, but this is exactly one of the ways of addressing that, I would argue. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much, Minister. And here let me turn to Jennifer Morgan, State Secretary and Germany's Special Envoy for International Climate. In fact, my question is on the solution side, because last Saturday, Chancellor Scholz talked about investments, German investments across Africa, but also he highlighted public investments is part of the question, while how we can use scarce public resources wisely to stimulate private investments. And he also talked about the global guarantee mechanism that Germany and other countries are working on. Can you just tell us about this mechanism? Is one of the solutions to address those challenges we have been talking about?
No, absolutely. Thank you. And I have to say that of all the events that I had on my calendar and my agenda, this is one of the ones that I was looking forward to the most and am most excited about. A thank you to Francesco and your team, to Elizabeth, for all the work that Irina has done. And we're really honored to be here with you today. And I think the questions that we've heard on energy access, the questions that we've heard on also the affordability and the cost of capital, those things from President Ruto's speech and other African leaders have stuck with us. And since then, I have to say, or since our collaboration even began, one thing that I just heard over and over again was the fact that the cost of capital was so high and the guarantees were such a big issue. And so that's why, yes, we're doing the public funding thing, and the Chancellor talked a bit about that, both on, for Compact for Africa and also through our international climate initiative. But what I'm happy to announce today is basically the creation, and we're working on a green guarantee group, because what we heard was of all of these impediments that you just outlined again, whether it be on it, we can't solve all of them at once, but the exchange rates, the challenging political conditions, the weak capacity of local institutions that drive capital costs and basically make otherwise promising projects like you have, they just don't happen. So what we're doing is to seek the answers to this very complex situation. And what we found is that guarantees are a very underutilized tool, and it's also a quite fragmented market, or a fragmented situation where you have many good initiatives out there, but you don't necessarily have them being connected. So we're very aware of the various international partners, including Denmark, including the US, and we don't want to duplicate existing efforts, but we want to pool this together because that's what we need to do. So what we're going to do is convene a group of actors that work with guarantees as a client or as a provider, and that includes governments. We've had many conversations here at the COP with various governments and beforehand, the MDBs, the World Bank, EBRD, all of that institution, which also have so much happening, development agencies, think tanks. We have CPI here that's doing cutting-edge work on this and thinking as well, private investors and insurance companies. And membership comes without financial or legal obligations. But it's really to look at what are the things that are out there, how do we match them with the projects and the programs on the ground, what's needed. So if you're interested, please reach out to my team that's here right now. We're developing it together, and I'm really looking forward to see how we can use opera to foster this kind of collaboration. And to really, for me, it's like, how do we get out of the silos of individual countries? We work together. I mean, the collaboration among the African partners here is inspiring, and we want to meet that inspiration and work together to drive forward energy access. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And let me turn to Minister Galetta from Ethiopia. Ethiopia has vast renewable energy resources, and the country is developing the resources not only for domestic use, but also with an ambition to export more. So how do you think APRA can help you achieve those objectives?
Thank you so much, moderator. Good morning, everyone. As is already said, in Ethiopia we do have huge potential of renewable energy, mainly from hydropower, from wind, solar, and geothermal. We believe, due to the topography or the location, we have the advantage of becoming energy hub in East Africa. So it's not only to be the energy hub, but we are already in action as of 2018, where we start to export our hydropower to Djibouti and Sudan. Every year we export with 1,000 gigawatts of power, gigawatt hour, to neighboring countries, increasing 15% per year the last 5 years. This year, 2022-23, we exported 1,700 gigawatts of energy to Kenya, to Djibouti, to Sudan. And still there is more demand from South Sudan and Somalia as well. So we believe that APRA is really can be a good springboard to bring our neighboring nations, brothers, to work together for collaborative approach. If we take Kenya, they do have good potential of geothermal. If we see Ethiopia, we are #1 in hydropower. So if we can link our energy systems with our neighboring countries, I think when there is a deficit on one side, there is a possibility of utilizing in that section. Another good opportunity is we are building big dam, as we know, the GERD, the Great Independence Dam, that is being built by the sole penny contributed by all Ethiopian citizens. That dam is going to bring additional 5.1 thousand. That means 1,150 gigawatt of power will be injected into the main grid system in 3 years. Already we start to inject 540 from 2 turbines, which has the capacity of having 750 megawatt capacity. This means a lot. We believe this is really a good opportunity to bring our neighboring nations with Ethiopians so that we can have better livelihood for our people. Another issue is, as my sister from Zimbabwe was raising, in the countryside, I think it's difficult to connect with the grid. So we have to go for alternative energy source, mainly with off-grid, from solar, from wind, so that each village or town they can have their own energy systems with the minimum possible price. So the exporting that we are doing to our neighboring country will be giving us a chance to go for getting more resources, mainly from the foreign currency, to invest in the local system. So finally, what I would like to say is there are a lot really we can do, especially what we can learn from each other, mainly in European countries, where there has been less contribution to climate change from the energy, and we do have also more advantage of developing our resource, mainly solar, wind, and hydropower. And Ethiopia is really blessed in hydropower, where about 92% of our current generation is on hydropower. The remaining is with solar and the wind, which we are working on to adjust the energy mix with the other aspect. So all those things can be really achieved when we are using APRA as a reference and then working together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me turn to Mr. Rick Duke, Deputy Special Envoy for Climate at the State Department. And at Africa Climate Summit, the US announced quite a number of investments in Africa. And where do you see the role of APRA within that picture? And how do you view APRA as a vehicle to increase investments, renewable energy investments in Africa to 2030?
Good morning. Thank you for the question. We are pleased as the United States to be supporting APRA and to build on our longstanding partnerships with IRENA, including through our Presidential Power Africa region that's longstanding in Africa. And I want to just give a quick sense of where we see the opportunity to really scale more quickly in a continent that needs and can benefit tremendously from lowering the cost of capital and really rolling out renewables, both off-grid, mini and metro-grid, and fully grid-connected solar and wind and geothermal and other renewables at the pace and scale that is possible. And just to really divide it into two areas of work for us. First, bilateral work. So the United States has been partnering with countries such as Kenya, where under President Ruto's leadership, you see this ambitious goal of 100% clean energy by 2030. And we've been working with our Power Africa effort with Kenya in order to get over 800 megawatts moving in Kenya. And we're proud to be working with Kenya on that agenda. Similarly, in Angola, our Export-Import Bank has been answering the call for longer tenor, lower cost financing for renewables, with $900 million this year in construction of 2 solar facilities in Angola. So we do that bilateral work where we can, of course, on renewables as a top priority for us, and APRA is very much aligned with those objectives for us, and we hope to work further with IRENA accordingly on this agenda. But we also work with partners, and that includes, of course, other governments, many on the stage here, and also philanthropy, such as Bezos Earth Fund, where we can. And just to very briefly give an indication of that kind of work, we have just this week announced with Germany and France's core partners a forest package with Democratic Republic of Congo. That includes, in addition to peatlands preservation and $50 million in funding for related work, a key complement that's really in the energy sector, because traditional biomass use is a major driver of deforestation and land use change pressure in DRC. So we have, with partners like GIAP, an opportunity to encourage metrogrid electrification and large-scale deployment of energy access solutions that include e-cooking and things like electric pressure cookers as part of the package. And at the same time, there are large-scale renewables opportunities, including hydro in DRC. So all of that is exciting, and I will just note that we've also seen some success, including with Germany and the European Commission last year in Egypt at a gigawatt scale with the Nexus of Water, Food, and Energy project that took $200 million in deeply concessional support from those partners, converted it to $10 billion in investment through European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and 10 gigawatts of renewables now moving in Egypt. And that is also now reflected in a 5-year acceleration of the renewables target in Egypt's NDC. So we need to operate at all these scales with creative partnerships across the board, and we are eager to really double down on this. And I just want to very briefly note, building on Dr. Galetta's reference to the importance of transmission and international trade in renewables, there are major opportunities on the continent for transmission that allows better pairing of flexible hydro with intermittent wind and solar. And that involves the usual challenges, but it's a tremendous opportunity and one that we hope that IRENA and APRA will continue to engage on, and the United States will be supportive of. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. Many thanks to ministers and the other representatives of all governments from Africa and our partners. And a very interesting discussion. And this brings us to the end of the first segment of our conversation. We will move to the institutional part now. I invite you to stay with us as much as possible, but I also understand that some of you may have other pressing engagements and you may wish to leave. So let me quickly move to the second part. Thank you. And I would like to start with Kevin Kariaki, Vice President at African Development Bank. Kevin, you heard from Kevin, you heard from the ambitions of African nations. You also heard from Germany and Denmark about some of the de-risking instruments and mechanisms. How do you see African Development Bank's involvement and support to APRA and supporting broadly energy transition in Africa through the partnership that we are trying to put together?
Thank you very much. Just to start, I'll start by saying that I would like to laud the creation of APRA. Number one, because it dovetails very well with the Nairobi Declaration for increasing renewables from 56 gigawatts to 300 gigawatts by 2030. This will entail increasing the capacity by more than 5 times, which is a huge task. And in this particular case, what I would want to add is that this will require mobilization of significant amounts of capital. But as Irina told us not too long ago, Africa only accounted for 2% of renewable energy investments over the last 2 decades. So what that means is that we will require to make seriously concerted efforts to de-risk investments to crowd in private sector. So first of all, one of the things that we'll need to do is to try and create enabling environment to attract private sector investments in terms of legal, regulatory and policy frameworks. And that's number one. And here what I would want to also emphasize is that we will help countries in establishing sustainable financial sector based on cost-reflective tariffs and credit-worthy off-takers. And secondly, to complement APRA's work, we have created what we call the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, and which received a huge shot in the arm on actually at this COP, whereby we got commitments, strong commitments for about $175 million for project preparation and project development. And this is very, very important, including Germany contributed towards this. So that's a very important part of what we're trying to do. Then, of course, we have what we call our Sustainable Fund for Energy Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, and this is more than $500 million, in which Germany, Denmark, and indeed USA's Power Africa are important donors, and it's playing an increasingly important part and catalytic role in de-risking projects through technical assistance and concessional finance instrument to remove market barriers and therefore crowding the private sector, as I mentioned earlier. And just to prove what we've been able to do, we will be able to support countries such as Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Kenya, etc., and evidence and leverage on what we've already achieved. For example, this year alone, we've been able to literally save 3 important projects, Komombo in Egypt, Kairouan in Tunisia, and Jeremiah in Chad, to make sure that they are able to get to a financial close through CEPA. So I think this is an instrument that we'll want to see playing an increasingly bigger role. So therefore, what I would add is that the global guarantee mechanism that was mentioned by Germany becomes an important toolkit for accelerating growth for renewables on the continent. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Let me turn to Diane Holdorf, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And my question is about the interface between development, energy transition, and development and green industrialization, and aligning development needs with growing green assets. And green industrialization is very central to our APRA partnership, and we would like to hear from you where the private sector sees opportunities within that picture.
Yes, thank you so much and good morning. Francesco, congratulations to you and the entire team at ARENA for putting this together, because it has the opportunity to bring together so much of the government leadership that we've heard, together with the private sector mobilization and the capital finance mobilization that we're just speaking about now. It connects also extremely well to some of the other announcements that have taken place this week. I think about the Industrial Transition Accelerator that was launched this week by the COP28 presidency and many partners that will focus further funding into exactly these types of green industrial corridor transformations. These are the roles that entities like World Business Council for Sustainable Development plays in trying to contribute the private sector acceleration into these partnerships and these investments. First, we can help to further mobilize the private sector capital. That helps us build partnerships with the multilateral investments and these types of programmatic investments, bringing private sector investment forward into deals and particularly into infrastructure. We see something similar in the Zero Emission Vehicle Transition Council's work, where there's an emerging market initiative format to it, where just in 1 year, we've been able to mobilize significant renewable infrastructure investment in partnership with many companies and partners in India. Africa is on the list for that as well, connecting it into specific leading countries who have the grid investment desire to build off of this is a key example of how we can mobilize that type of investment. But there are other aspects that the private sector can bring that's equally important. We haven't talked about the jobs model that this provides yet. Building skills, building capabilities, managing the infrastructure, not just the build out, but the management and ongoing lift of that, and how that then connects to build and scale local industry growth and opportunity. It's so critical that these grid investments connect into local benefit, not just provisioning and trade for others. Yes, that partnership is always key, but how can we really lift the local industry through these investments as well? And that's something that our 230 leading companies who are members look to for not only their operations, but their supply chain partners who are operating in country as well through sourcing or direct purchase. So there's a lot of ways we can connect these entire value chains when we're talking about the level of renewables investment that needs to take place. And companies are very motivated by this. They've made net zero commitments. They have business plans that will get them to a 1.5 degree level of compliance, but not without this kind of multi-sector renewable infrastructure investment. So we look to these types of partnerships for how we lift and accelerate joint investment, leveraging business strategy in these priority regions into infrastructure co-investment. Looking forward to the next steps with this.
Thank you very much, Diane. I understand you have some other commitments and you may wish to leave. Please do at your convenience. Let me turn to Mr. Richard Müller from Investment Fund for Developing Countries. And I would like to go back to our discussion with the ministers on the global guarantee mechanism. And as Denmark is part of that effort, and I would like to hear from you how IFU is planning to support it and what's your role and involvement within this effort?
Thank you very much for the question. So for those in the audience, IFU is the Danish DFI. We have invested into Africa for over 50 years, so this cooperation is very much at the heart of what we do. We have an ambition to invest in the African continent around 50% annually of our investment volume and 20% into the LDCs. So in terms of delivering on this agenda, this is very much a priority for us. Just before I get to the question on the guarantee, I think importantly, recently the Danish government carried through a reform of IFU, which means that we will be able to double our capital base over the coming years, which we are very excited about, which of course we hope will also mean that we can deliver on the SDGs and the high ambitions and the urgency which has been set out during these few days. In terms of the guarantees, that's correct. We have recently been entrusted with a guarantee facility by the Danish government for 2 billion Danish kroner, which we hope will also help mobilize private capital to the extent that it will help de-risk some of the projects that we are discussing here. It's a guarantee in the sense that it's a risk-sharing model. Initially, we will run this as a pilot. We have teamed up with the Swedish International Development Agency, SIDA, who has 15 years experience running guarantee instruments. And we will, over the current, months, be ramping up our guarantee team and building on the experience that SIDA has gained over the years. So very excited about that. I think the type of instruments or guarantees that we would be looking to deploy would very much, for example, go into some of the small-scale solar projects that we've heard about, which is there's a need for. And we know with the current cost of capital, de-risking is very much needed, and hopefully the guarantees will help to attract private investments into those. I think that's part of it. I think also on the guarantee, I mean, we have as an institution invested into guarantee financiers. We are already a partner of African Guarantee Fund. We're also a partner of Africa Green Co, which some of you may have heard about, which also during these past few days have announced a number of exciting developments. So I think in terms of guarantees, I think we are well positioned. As an institution, we still need to learn, but we now have the commitments from our principals, and we're very excited to kind of deploy this over the coming months and years.
Thank you very much, Rick. And Philip Christiani from Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, CIP. And I understand CIP is extensively investing in energy transition. And I would like to hear from you about your investment pipeline, particularly in Africa. And how does it look like? And how do you, Rick talked about the risking investments. I would like to hear from you also, how do you address risks, especially in developing countries that you are working with?
First of all, thank you very much for organizing this, orchestrating the discussion and the event. It's hugely valuable. Secondly, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners is a Danish investment firm. We manage 26 billion euros. They're all invested into renewable wind and solar, and recently also into what you referred to as the energy transition, or the molecule development and the production of hydrogen and ammonia. We have a large investment pipeline in Africa. We have a 26 gigawatt pipeline in South Africa. We are in dialogues with a number of countries on the African west coast, in Mauritania, in Namibia, in Morocco. We are also on the African east coast. We're in Egypt. Although not being in Africa, we have a large plot of land in Oman for the development of renewables. So we have a focus on Africa and the African countries. And why do we look at Africa? We look at Africa because of the natural resources. We look at Africa for the wind and the solar, and for the ability to create really competitive cost of energy, leveraging these resources. And these resources are, in our mind, if not second to none, if you compare to the rest of the world, they are at least at the same level as Australia, as Oman, as Chile, and the US. There are very few places on the planet where we find this combination of wind and solar that make large-scale renewable projects profitable in the way that we can in Africa, in certain places in Africa at least. And that brings me to the discussion of risk, because there are two elements we believe will be the key in making this succeed in the future. The first is that, and we've referred to this a couple of times, that we secure bankable projects, and we secure the offtake. And for us, in many of the situations, that will involve some sort of global company that will be able to offtake these molecules. It could be very large shipping companies. It could be energy companies in Europe. It could be airlines, for that matter. So that's the first part of the equation, and for us right now, a very important part of the equation. We need to see these markets develop and move forward. The second part of the equation is what you're doing with these guarantees discussions, for example. It is the work of the DFIs in Europe. It's the work of IFU in Denmark, and we will only be successful if we manage to bring these two elements together: the bankable offtake and the guarantee organizations, whether they are established through governmental intervention or by DFIs.
Thank you very much. Before I move to Nicole, I would just like to announce that we might have a couple of minutes for taking one or two questions. We have still 4 members of our panel with us. And if you have any questions, we're going to take it just after Nicole's intervention. Nicole, thank you very much for joining us. And I know that Bezos Earth Fund, one of the key focus areas is energy transition. And I would like to specifically ask you about especially the skill and capacity gaps that we see many countries that we are working with in Africa. And is it something that Bezos Earth Fund or in broadly philanthropies are looking at to address and help countries close this gap?
Certainly, and thank you very much. And just before I answer that, I would like to say a few words. And we really need to look at the facts. Africa represents just under 20% of the global population. But when you look at the last decade, less than 2% of global investment into renewables has gone into the region. This needs actually direct addressment. And so at Bezos Earth Fund and within the philanthropy world, we're very focused on how can we be catalytic. How can we actually mobilise more financing to address these core gaps? And obviously Africa is a core market for philanthropy, both with my hat as the Director of Global Energy at the Bezos Earth Fund, but also as an executive member of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. We need to mobilise funds in an innovative way. That's through philanthropy, private debt, including institutional debt. But one thing I would like to say is that we know it's not really working at the pace right now. So we do need to draw the debt and draw the funds, not just purely debt, equity as well, at the faster, at a quicker speed. But we've got to think more innovative about these products. Because currently the thinking, the risk profile, the products, it's just not getting there as quick as we need. So it's more innovation. One other comment I would say, I did welcome the earlier comments about the guarantees. There does need to rethink about how we're going to accelerate more development, more financing, and guarantees can be part of this. But let's make sure when we look at these guarantees, we're not just looking at what's in existence today, because we know it's not working sufficiently. Let's look at what are the new types of guarantees, and part of that has to include foreign exchange risk. We must look at this more from a very innovative way as a community and make sure it's also relative to the region. For example, in Africa or Sierra Leone, the specific countries, we need to make products that are going to really accelerate that output. So mobilised capital is really important, and hence we congratulate IRENA and their partners for this important collaboration on APRA. But particularly to your questions about skill job, at the Bezos Earth Fund, we are focused on accelerating the energy transition. And being philanthropy and very special capital, because we're 100% grant-based, we want to be catalytic with our partners and our fellow stakeholders. And being catalytic means how can we accelerate this? So it's working out those gaps and barriers that are best appropriate for philanthropy funds, being 100% grant-based. And one area, not exclusively, but one area is obviously the skill gap. So in terms of whether it's be government or private job capacity, that is an area that's very important to both Bezos Earth Fund as well as GAP and other philanthropists too. This is an area where we feel that our capital can do very good transformative influence. It's also a gap that other financing is not there or can't meet. So it's actually a gap that we can play an important role in to provide that capacity, but capacity that is relevant to those local markets and make sure those local markets then take it forward. So it's to provide further economic development while we're still focusing on accelerating that energy transition. And what's important too, I would say, is it's not just on the government side, but it's also to attract that private sector. Government's there definitely for roles and they're an important stakeholder, but the private sector also has to accelerate this transition. So it's trying to create those incentives with other partners to accelerate that within that live economic ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Nicole. So now it is your turn. I understand Danish Export Credit Agency representative might be with us. Okay, Mr. Peder Lundqvist is with us, the CEO of Danish Export Credit Agency, and he wants to make an intervention.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, and huge congratulations on the project. And I think combining in this day the analysis and the need for guarantees as a key financial instrument to mobilize capital, and then at the same time having local value creation as a cornerstone, I think it's the first time I've seen that combined, and I think that's, for me, that's the tool for the future. So I'll address my questions around these two items. Let's say first about mobilizing private capital. We talked about the need for bankability as the key, let's say, access to that. But bankability can come in many ways. One way is to have the local utility providing the guarantee or the bankability. Another way is to have the local finance ministry to provide the bankability. So I would of course like to hear maybe from the part you had from Kenya, what are they thinking about this? And then maybe a second question about local value creation. I think it's imperative that we actually manage to sustain a local value creation that keeps, let's say, development, jobs, things at a local level What is your thinking about that? How can we, let's say, have templates, standards, procedures for that?
Thank you very much. We have one more question here.
Yes, and it's more of an intervention. My name is Monica Gullberg. I represent SIDA, Swedish International Development Corporation. And as my Danish colleague said, we have big guarantee instruments. We have like $200 million in portfolio guarantees. We can also do project-specific guarantees. My comment would be, after this number of years supporting with a guarantee instrument, we also support with grants. I would congratulate you, Francesco and Gurbus, for this excellent opportunity to work on the market. And apart from the money, we also need new business models, because the sustainability of the investment would also come from a secured cash revenue. And the only model that really works now is the IPP model. But we need to see investments in grids, and we need to see investments in industries, shared risk between power supply and industry. And we also need to see much more business models for the decentralized renewable energy sector, meeting agriculture, meeting health, like you presented yesterday. So my hopes for this APRA is that you will also look at new business models to make the affairs viable, because the money is there, but it's not only about the capital cost, it's also about the actual affair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Can you just pass the microphone to just next to you?
Thank you very much. No, I can speak French. No problem. Merci beaucoup. Je pense que c'est une parfaite idée comment accélérer le partenariat et renouveler dans le secteur agricole en Afrique. Particulièrement en Afrique, tous les partenaires viennent dans le secteur de développement rural. On a beaucoup de projets qui ont investi dans le développement rural, mais l'impact, le résultat final, c'est-à-dire qu'il faut absolument des projets d'investissement où les projets, où la vie du monde rural, donc il y a les méfaits des changements climatiques qui sont devenus une influence malgré nous. C'est le climat qui dicte maintenant sa loi sur la vie du monde rural. Donc, s'il y a des partenariats en Afrique dans le domaine du développement et d'investissement entre les différents ministères, il faut des projets d'investissement tels que les barrages, les micro-barrages, après la pluie, où les gens peuvent faire des sites de dépendage, de la canalisation pour des irrigations, des cultures, des contre-saisons de maraîchage qui génèrent une activité génératrice de revenus à la vie du monde rural. Je vous remercie. Si je me suis comprendre.
Thank you. I hope some of you might have understood, those speaking French, but thank you very much. AFREC representative, I understand. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I think we have already... here?
Good morning once again. I just wanted to speak to some of the issues which you raised. I'm Gloria from Zimbabwe, Secretary for Energy and Power Development. Following our presentation, I think there were issues to do with local value creation, which you raised. And I think we definitely agree with you, given that renewable energy technologies are basically imported technologies from Europe, from China, from the US, but the critical materials which go into those technologies, actually a lot of them are found in Africa. And we believe that prior to exporting those critical materials, I'm looking at lithium, we're looking at copper for Zambia, nickel, we need the value chain to be at least starting local. And why we are saying that is we need to create jobs for our youth. We need to create jobs for our people. And that initial value addition, whether it's at concentrate level or moving on to a much more usable, creates jobs, but also creates value for the country. And we want our partners to appreciate that. As a country, Zimbabwe, we've already made a law that you cannot export raw lithium. You need to build something to do the concentrates, to add value to it so that we create that economy around the critical materials. And that way we then also have a stake within the renewable energy technologies, because for our own countries, it's all about importing. And when we talk incentives, we are talking about import incentives, reducing duties, which is also taking away further revenues from our own governments. So we need partnerships where we are looking at how do we become part of the full value creation, and then we can then accelerate the adoption of these renewables by also creating value for our countries. And then the second part which I wanted to speak to is the issue of guarantees. As the government, we have come up with what we refer to as the government project support implementation agreement, which is being done through the Ministry of Finance, which is part of what you're saying. And that one is really looking more at the currency convertibility, because we do have challenges with currency convertibility, and we are bringing in that commitment to say if you bring in your money, you should be able to take it out in the currency which you brought it into the country. So these are some of the initiatives which we have put in place to ensure that as a country we are not just adopting renewables, but the renewables should make a difference to our own communities as African countries. I had a question, maybe I'll take the opportunity whilst I still have the microphone, to ask about the philanthropy funds. I think the issue of gaps within our policies, within knowledge and skills, we feel that there is need for capacitation as African countries in terms of access to the carbon market, structuring the financial instruments which allow, I think there was a comment about financial instruments, to say we cannot use the same current financing models to address the issue of acceleration. There has to be a change, we have to be innovative. So we would like to know, because we have a lot of access issues which really need to be, which will give that initial impetus to the development within the communities, which then might not be easy to fund through debt financing, but will need philanthropic financing from grants and other, and we have those projects which are then also linked to what he referred to as productive use infrastructure, where you do common infrastructure for a community to address issues of food security and also energy security, but most importantly, productivity within those communities, and then build the economy. So how do we access funds like yourself? And we are really hoping that this meeting will then give us some even further information in terms of how we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. We have just a few minutes left to wrap up, but I'll give you the floor to Nicole and then to Kande.
Thank you so much for asking that question. Agree, that is a gap, and I think that's where philanthropy funds with their unique special capital can actually look at. The thing with philanthropy funds too is we want to make it scalable too, because we want to be the most impactful for every dollar we put into something. So through philanthropy, because we are independent, we are neutral, we think we can not only address that, but we can also look at multiple parties to come together, bring ways of how we can give grant money to this capacity filling, but also scale it and really accelerate that too. So for example, discussions with yourself, discussions with Sierra Leone and other neighbours as well. We really would look to both from Bezos Earth Fund, also, if you don't mind me saying, also from GAP and other philanthropies, to look at how we can be the most creative to design that, but also design it to the sense of we initiate to fill that gap, but create a model then that propels itself, because that's the success. Grant funding is wonderful to take some of those gaps and initiate it and sort of propel, but we also want to make sure we look at those business models to make sure they're more innovative and they're more sustainable to actually then propel on themselves, and then they just continue to accelerate.
Thank you. I just wanted to underscore a point made by Ethiopia and two other points. One is the opportunity for energy trade. He made a good point, but the same thing applies in West Africa. With the resources our different countries have, there's a huge opportunity for achieving energy access and deploying more renewables on the grids if we can have those interconnections. In the case of Sierra Leone, we already have an interconnection which started operating last year between Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Cote d'Ivoire. That's already a market of over 50 million people. It's already working, which means a company, when you invest in our renewables, you are not only selling to 8 million people, you're selling to 50 million people. So that it makes those projects now scalable, that you're looking at a bigger market. Second, on your question about guarantees, please don't forget about guarantees with the PPAs, the power purchase agreements. So, modestly speaking, 80% of our utilities are not economically viable. So utility reform is going to be key also under APRA. How we reform those utilities, their governance structures, so that their power purchase agreements can be honored, but also with a guarantee scheme built in. Otherwise, the IPPs will not come. The guy who is supposed to buy your energy is not viable. So reform of the utilities is going to be crucial. My last comment is, as a complementary to APRA, we have to know that also here last week, our presidents launched the Green Industrialization Initiative on the value addition. We know and we recognize that we're sitting on 40% of those critical minerals the rest of the world needs for the bigger green transition. We don't want those minerals exploited bit by bit as is happening. Everybody is chasing us individually for the lithium, for the titanium we have. And you look at our countries, I just give you one case study. Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, we're sitting on the largest deposits of titanium and bauxite, and also iron ore. My country sits on 22 billion tons of iron ore, the purest and second largest deposit of titanium in the world. 50 years, very little benefit. So yes, our presidents have launched the Green Industrialization Initiative. We know other countries are joining that initiative. But it was a good point, again, led by President Ruto. He's leading climate, he's leading green industrialization, he's leading in renewables. So we want this to be complementary. And the reason is, we will be 2.2 billion by 2050. For Europeans, I say, that's a market, or it's the source of the new migration. Deal with the migration with energy and value addition. It cannot be exploitative. This new partnership has to mean that our interest in green industrialization must be backed by our ambition in energy access. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kande. I would like to thank you all for all your interventions. I think we have heard very high ambition from the African countries. We have heard also about challenges, but also equally opportunities. And we have also heard a lot of potential mechanisms that can be put in place, guarantee mechanisms or otherwise, that can help facilitate the deployment of solutions at scale. This is what we need to make the energy transition at scale and the necessary speed. So I would like to thank you all for all your interventions and remarks. And can I ask a big applause to our panelists before we close the session?